Hi and welcome back to another Tech Minds video. So today I'm currently sat in SDRPlay's laboratory. This is where all the design happens for their SDRPlay products, and today we're going to be going through with them the whole design process from conception of idea all the way through to production and distribution. So let's go ahead and have a chat with John, who can tell us more about it. Hi John, welcome to the Tech Minds channel. Would you like to just go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm John Hudson, G4ABQ, a radio amateur and one of the SDRPlay team.
So what's your main role at SDRPlay, John?
So I'm responsible for sales and marketing is the main role, but we're quite a small team, so actually everyone chips in with all the activities as much as they can.
So just talk me through the team members. Who have you got on board at SDRPlay and what do they do?
So going back 10 or more years, there was a company called Mirix who had pioneered SDR technology for mobile applications, cell phones, PCs, where there was a requirement to have wideband coverage from long wave through to L band when it came to embedding broadcast reception into a range of platforms. Mirix really pioneered the technology that had to withstand a pretty demanding environment, because if you think about it, a cell phone or a small laptop won't have access to the best antennas. Maybe there's power requirements and limitations. Yeah. So that technology was originally targeted for those type of applications. However, the engineers at that company suddenly realized there was a lot of interest from the hobbyist community who were using cheaper dongles for communications reception. Right. And so knowing that there was a huge interest in the shortwave listening and the ham radio community, my friend Simon, who was from Mirix, said, why don't we get together and come up with a really wideband product that could be good for serious hobby interest in reception. And so that's where the guys at Mirix and with extra help came together and in fact the very first RSP1 concept was formed, and this is actually the original form factor of the RSP1 that came out in 2014. We didn't make that many of them, and
is that the first? That's the very first product. What coverage did that one have?
And that one had from 100 kilohertz up to 2 gigahertz, and it also had a gap, because a lot of the innovation that comes into a rugged SDR product is really coping with all the interfering signals and intermodulation problems that you can have that make it unattractive to compete with a general coverage receiver. What SDRPlay set out to do was to try and have the same kind of experience you would expect to have with a much more expensive communications receiver across the entire spectrum. Right. So we launched the first product, and it was only with additional software that we were able to move on to the production RSP1, which had, actually then we got it down to 10 kilohertz with no gaps up to 2 gigahertz. So by 2000, that's still an RSP1. It's just engineered into a more robust plastic case. We changed the input connector from the F-type to the more popular SMA.
I didn't notice the
so that's a subtle
yeah.
difference, but the electronics was essentially the same. And then over time, it was clear that because it covered such a big bandwidth, that people really wanted to maybe be able to spin the dial literally from one end of the spectrum to the other, sure, without having to sort of disconnect antennas all the time. Yeah. And so the concept of having multiple software selectable antenna ports became one of the key features that we put in place when we moved to our next product, which was the RSP2, which came in two form factors. There was the slightly lower cost plastic box version, and then the heavy steel case version, the RSP2 Pro.
Is it the same board in
It's essentially the same electronics in each. These were just packaging variants.
Sure.
The other
3 different antenna connections.
Yes, and they had both had 2 SMAs, but also at lower frequencies, up to 30 megahertz, a high impedance input, which allows you to connect a long wire directly to it without giving better matching. So that was the next product that came out in 2016, and then a bit after that, the learning we got, and I can't emphasize enough how, and it's been a very sort of fun experience as we interact with the growing community of users who have got lots of ideas and suggestions on what we might accommodate. And indeed, we didn't get it always right with all the specs, and we learnt as from our users. And so really the later products, including the more recent ones, have all taken that learning from some of the shortcomings in the older products. The RSP2 is a great product, by the way.
Yeah.
And it included other innovations like the ability to daisy chain clock in and out. Mm-hmm. It wasn't able to go down to the very low frequencies on the SMA inputs, and we found a way to fix that for the future products. So all the current production products, the RSP1A, mm-hmm. which is the sort of entry-level single antenna product,
yeah, it's a great receiver,
through to the RSP Duo, which is our kind of top-of-the-range dual tuner.
Yeah, so that one has 2 tuners in it that can be received independently
exactly.
at the same time. So that's really useful. So I've got a great video on my channel demonstrating the RSP Duo, listening to ATC and also decoding ADSB as well. So that's a really good example of why you'd need two tuners
exactly.
in one receiver.
Because with this one you can have 2 chunks of 2 megahertz spectrum simultaneously anywhere from 1 kilohertz to 2
and then
gigahertz.
Obviously you can just view that using SDR Uno.
Yeah.
That's great.
And you can configure your screen to see the 2 independent channels, if you like, which is great for comparing, say, 2 antennas in real time. Yeah. Rather than having to hope that the propagation conditions were the same.
That's really good.
And the other thing that with the fact that we've got phase coherence, there's the ability to do direction finding and noise cancelling with the Duo. So that's really our sort of top of the range one. And then the DX, of course, has an additional feature below 2 megahertz that just optimises the performance down there.
Yeah, I've done a video on the VLFs beacons and things like that, and I can definitely say the DX works extremely well for that low down. It's a good device.
Yeah, but I think all the time we're learning. We probably still have compromises. It is a compromise using a wideband receiver. With such a wide open front end, and we're just more and more adding to the capabilities through the software. And SDR Uno, which is a software that kind of glues all this together, is something that we acquired from an Italian developer. It was called Studio One, and you used to have to pay $179, and you had a security dongle for it. And the guy was ready to sort of move on and retire, and we acquired the software and rights to it. And so ever since 2016, we've been really trying to bring features into it that enhance and allow the hardware in harmony with the software to be optimized.
So John, just tell me about the team members at SDRPlay and what they do. Just give me a brief overview of what each of the team members do.
So as well as our support guys, Steve, KI5ENW in Dallas, and Mike in Florida, KD2 KOG. Over here in the UK, we've got our key founder, Simon, who's really the kind of brains behind SDRPlay, the original prime mover, if you like, our CEO. We've got Ian on the hardware side, Andy on the software side. I do the sales and marketing, coming from my sort of amateur radio background. And then we have Peter, who handles all our finance, operations, and actually some of our system software as well.
Right. Okay, so just tell me a little bit about the process you take when you're going to release a new model. I mean, for example, how did you go from like the RSP1A to the next model, or the Duo to the DX? I mean, how can you? I mean, those two I know are completely different products. Yeah. But just tell me about briefly how you go as a team, how you come together and think about the new features for the next products.
So with every new product, there's kind of a sort of bubbling away, a sort of little growing list of additional features and functions that we want to bring to our customers. And we can see the limitations in each of our existing products. And when it gets to the point we feel, well, there's enough here to create the next generation of, for example, the RSP2 moving to the RSP-DX, there's kind of a backlog of catch-up stuff to do. We sit and look at how we could architect that. Obviously, with a small team, we've only got a limited bandwidth in terms of how many new products we can work on. And we are looking at future architectures beyond using the Myrix chipset.
Right.
So it's a kind of... we come together weekly via Skype, but we have face-to-face meetings every 2 or 3 months, where we kind of brainstorm what makes sense to do next, what's achievable. It can be affected a little bit by the both the competitive landscape and also what's going on in the user community and what's new, what's hot, what needs doing.
Sure.
And that's equally true really on the software side, because we do collaborate with other people as well to try and move faster with the software offering. And I think plugins in version 1.4 is a key way of harnessing other developers so they can seamlessly have their software interact with SDR Uno.
So would you say then that new products, new SDRPlay products, are primarily driven from user requests?
Very much so. Very much so. Right. I mean, we're always looking, on the edge of what we're doing, and we are seeing a growing use in the kind of industrial applications below 2 gigahertz, where a cost-effective receiver is needed. The spectrum analyzer software from Steve Andrews proving very, very popular as another use case for
I've done a video on that, and it's extremely accurate. It's a great tool.
Yeah.
Okay, John, thanks very much for joining us today and going through the process and showing us the range of products. So I'm going to go over and talk to Andy now, the software guy who does SDR Uno, and let's ask him a few questions. Hi Andy, welcome to Tech Minds. So if you'd just like to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your role within SDRPlay.
Yeah, hi Matt. So I'm a co-founder of SDRPlay, one of the co-founders, and I'm responsible for all the software development that we do here. Just a brief background, I've been in the semiconductor industry since 1988 in various roles. Until 2014, when we decided to start SDRPlay, and I haven't looked back. It's been a great experience, and just loving it.
Okay, so you've been with SDRPlay for roughly 6 years now. So tell us a bit more about SDR Uno. How did it evolve? How did it get started?
So when we started in 2014 with RSP1, we talked to obviously a number of groups and SDR related people. And they said if you just provide a library then that can control the SDR, then software will be written around the library. And so that's what we did. We produced a very well documented library with the hardware. And I think in our first month, we sold maybe 1 or 2 devices. And we rapidly came to the conclusion that having just a library wasn't going to be sufficient. We needed our own software. And so to start from scratch, developing SDR software is an incredibly long process.
Yeah.
So we started off by writing plugins for other software, other freely available software, and talking to other software developers like Simon Brown at SDR Console. And so we appeared in various bits of software. We had a good relationship with Charles over at Cubic SDR, and we just appeared in different software as plugins.
Right.
But we were still wanted to have our own software because it became increasingly evident that whilst we could work with other software in a plugin form, we felt that people weren't kind of getting the full RSP experience.
Right.
Because obviously with a plugin, you have to work within the limitations of that plugin framework. And so in 2016, we had the opportunity to acquire Studio One. And Studio One was a commercial package that had been sold for about 200 or something euros for a number of years. It had been in development for about at least 6 years that I'm aware of prior to that. So it's very well developed software. We talked to a number of people about Studio One, and a lot of people raved about its audio capability. And so we looked at it, and it was quite a turning point really for us. It was quite an investment for us to make, but we realized that it wasn't something we could charge for. We needed to kind of, we charge for the hardware and the software is free.
Yeah.
So it was quite a decision that we took, but we knew that having the software under our own control, we could do some really cool things going forward. And so that's what we did. And so my role, although I do a number of things, different bits of software and stuff, but primarily I'm responsible for making sure that SDR Uno evolves and supports all the hardware and supports all of the new features that we're adding.
Well, yeah, I was just going to say, actually, having your own software, such as SDR Uno, you have full control and you're able to control every aspect of the hardware because, you've got a direct connection to it rather than relying on other people's software and running it through a DLL, an API, or some kind of plugin, So that's great. So how does SDR Uno now, how does it evolve in the sense of new features? I mean, obviously you guys must have some kind of input into new features. I mean, I spoke with John briefly about new hardware ideas, and a lot of that was user-based sort of feedback. So when it comes to SDR Uno, how do you go about thinking of new ideas for the software to make it better? What's your process there?
So I would say it's fairly similar. We've obviously got some of our own ideas of how we want SDR Uno to develop. Really, SDR Uno was really the only way we could actually exploit a lot of the functionality in RSP Duo, for example, the whole master-slave functionality and the diversity functionality.
Yeah.
And so having our own software was kind of vital, really, to fully exploit the hardware. So there are a number of things that SDR Uno does that is sort of predefined by the hardware. And again, HDR mode for the RSP DX is another one. But then after that, virtually all the other features that we're adding, when we added scanning, that was a long time request from the users, from people who are giving us a lot of feedback. So all of the other features that we're adding, remote client server support that we're doing, these have all come from the user base. And the great thing about that is we try and attend, obviously prior to the whole COVID-19 situation, we tried to attend as many events, both in the UK and abroad. I went to Germany and supported the events there, and also over to the US. We just, I go to primarily just gather information from people who use the software, who use other bits of software, things they like, things they don't like. And then I come back and compile a huge list. And then obviously, we're a very, very small team. So we have to kind of whittle that down to something that is manageable.
Yeah.
And we've ended up with a program now of sort of the program of features that we're adding now and that we've kind of got in the near term, they have pretty much all been defined by our customers, really.
I think it's good that you guys obviously go out to these events and actually get in front of the customers, and they're able to come and chat to you guys and give feedback, whether it's good or bad, or suggest new features. I think that's really important, and you guys are definitely doing the right thing there. And obviously, when you meet a user, you can judge their frustrations if they've come across an issue or something that they want to work a little bit better, or a feature which is going to be just modified in a way that will suit them more. But it's really interesting. I mean, myself, I'm a software developer as well. I develop for iOS and Android, so I know all about the kind of user feedback that you get, and I constantly get emails asking for features for software. So a lot of features that I put into my apps are they are user driven. So I think that's really important for a company to listen to its user base and take that feedback and give them what they want. I think that's how you keep customers coming back. I mean, after all, I mean, SDR Uno is a fantastic application. I mean, it looks professional. It's got really nice sounding audio. And it surprises me with the new features that you keep coming out with, like the scanning and now the plugins as well. I mean, this great, the opportunities that's been opened by having the plugins. So tell me, how did that start? How did the plugins come about? What made you guys bring in that feature? And can you tell me any more about any future plugins that you might be working on or anything?
Yeah, sure. What was evident over the last couple of years when we've been going to shows, getting feedback in via email or whatever, how it's coming back to us, is there was a couple of things. Firstly, people look at Uno and they go, "That's far too complicated. It's a really massively complicated application, and I can't use it."
Yeah.
And I always tell people that Uno is as complicated or as easy as you want it to be.
Yeah.
And so when they come to the shows, or I quite often, both myself and John, we quite often go out to various user group meetings, and we show people. We say, "Here, the software's here. Come and have a go. Ask questions." And every single time that somebody has come to me and said, "How do I do X?" they've always gone away saying, "I didn't realize it was that easy."
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that we are trying to do over time is just to try to make Uno produce more user-friendly error messages, to be a bit more intuitive. The whole look and feel of SDR Uno isn't something that we created; it was something that we inherited. And so we have a long-term.
You inherited a really good application. I mean, the layout of it is awesome. I think it looks great, and like you said, it does look complicated on the first glance, but once you actually start playing around with it and just, at the end of the day, it's software. You can default it back to how it was. You can just have a play around, flip, change values, sliders, whatever you want to do. You shouldn't be able to break it. One of the things I'll just mention was I thought to myself for ages, I thought it'd be really good if I'll give you the example. Listening to a local ham radio repeater that's got CTCSS subtone, and the subtones really come through with the audio on FM. And I thought it'd be really good if I could filter that out. And then I actually discovered there was a feature on SDR Uno to do that. I didn't realize you can do that. So, it may look complicated, and you may think to yourself, "Oh, I need this feature," and it's probably already got it. It's just a case of, working with it and sticking with it. And
there's a lot of software out there. There's a lot of software that does all various different things. But we try to produce software that, the stuff that we're adding, obviously a lot of the stuff that's already there, it's going to be difficult for us to change quickly in a short period of time. So over a long period of time, we will change some of that stuff. But everything that we add is hopefully intuitive, easy to use, and so that's really kind of where the plugin system came from. Was a very similar conversation we had with a lot of people. Is can you add this decoder? Can you add that decoder? Can you do this? Can you do that? And we thought, well, what's the problem here is that we are the bottleneck for everything that happens in SDR Uno. So one way to relieve that bottleneck is to create a plugin system so that you effectively now create 2-track development programs. So SDR Uno, we still focus on SDR Uno core functionality and adding in all of the things that we've said on our roadmap. But now, anybody that's got some sort of C++ knowledge can just pick up the template plugin and add functionality into Uno. So we've got some great plugins from some developers. We've got there's a couple of very popular ones. Fran from Eric Cottrell is a very popular community plugin. It takes a database of stations and annotates them on the display. There's some great plugins by a guy called Eddie McDonald, who's doing some great ones with controllers, and I've got some videos to come out on that. So there's a number of people who are working actively on plugins now, which is great because it means that more software is developing for SDR Uno, and the ecosystem is growing, and it's not relying on us getting all that done as well as the core functionality of SDR Uno.
No, I think that's great. I mean, you're giving the front end and the hardware, and you're allowing people to create their own applications, and just literally pipe whatever data they need, the IQ stream, right, and decode it and do what they want.
SDR Uno deals with the hardware because it's best placed to do that.
Yeah.
And then the plugin system can then not have to worry about the hardware. You don't have to worry about whether I've got do I have a DX or a 1A or whatever do I have connected. A plugin can then just do what it should be doing with the data. It can take the IQ data, it can take the audio data, it can overwrite the audio data and put it back like our DAB plugin does. Our DAB plugin replaces the audio path with the data from its processing.
Yeah, that works really clever. I like that.
And so that's a good example of that. We've got some other things in the pipelines for plugins. We're not really focusing too much on doing our own because really we've got such a program of core development. We really want to get on with that. But one that we will see very soon that's coming out is an MPX output. So you'll be able to take the MPX output straight from SDR Uno straight into, say, something like RDS Spy. And we've been testing that, and that's been working very well. And I think you'll just see more and more community plugins. That's really where I think the beauty of this system is the sort of community of developers that are sort of growing up around SDR Uno. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting together a community installer, plugin installer. So what we'll do is we'll gather up all of the community plugins for a particular SDR Uno release. Yeah. And we'll bundle them all together with SDR Uno. And then when you go forwards, so developers don't have to continually maintain lots of different versions of plugins for different versions of Uno. So we'll do that sort of freezing, and then they can just focus on going forwards rather than have to continually looking backwards and have compatibility issues.
So that takes away a lot of the process where a user would have to search different websites for plugins. They can literally come to one place and install the community plugins from one installer, and we know that it's going to be trusted. It's because each of those plugins within that community package would have been tested for that particular version of SDR Uno. And I think that's important for end users because they don't really want to test out different installers or different plugins if there's a potential that it could cause issues to their software that's running at the moment. So by having an official community installer for a range of plugins which have been officially, vetted and installed and approved by, say, SDRPlay, I think that's going to appeal quite a lot to end users. So I think that's a really good idea. When do you think we might see that come out?
That will appear in the next release of SDR Uno. So what we're doing is we're going to be gathering those plugins up in the next week or so, and then that'll go out as a kind of a snapshot of where we are with the next build of SDR Uno.
So they will actually already be in SDR Uno, in the installer of SDR Uno, or it will be a separate installer?
So in the next release, so at the moment, the way SDR Uno works is it installs the our plugins as a separate install, and then it will kick off a kind of a community package installer. Right. So it will. So if you just follow the standard SDR Uno installation procedure, it will install our plugins, then the community plugins, and then the rest of SDR Uno.
So at the moment, the plugins that you've got, I know you've got the DAB plugin, you've got the
we've got the audio recorder,
and you've got DX cluster.
Got the DX cluster.
Yeah.
So we published a source code for the DX cluster because that was something that I put together.
I like that. Plugins, it's really good.
Well, it kind of works. Some people have reported that it doesn't work all the time. So what we decided to do was put the source code up there, and if people want to have a play with it, have a tweak, have a look, see how it works, then they're absolutely fine to kind of go and have a look and maybe modify it and maybe improve it. That's fine. We won't be doing that with the DAB and the audio recorder plugins because they weren't written by us. So we need to respect the authors, who don't really necessarily want to hand out the source code for whatever reason. And so, but they'll always be freely available. And we're going to try to do some in the next sort of. Not in the next release of Uno, but in the 1.41, where we've got things like the scheduler coming, we're going to try and do something a bit more, pull the plugins inside some of the core functionality of SDR Uno. So at the moment, you've got SDR Uno and you've got the plugins, and they sort of, although SDR Uno and the plugins share data, the plugins are still sort of can be seen as kind of sitting outside of SDR Uno. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen with the scheduler is that we're going to have the ability to bring the plugins into the core functionality. So you'll be able to sort of schedule. Let's say you set up a schedule to every Friday at 6 o'clock to start SDR Uno up. Well, that could then start up the audio recorder, for example. So we're going to start to sort of pull these two things together, so that the sort of interface and the borders become a bit mashed, and you just see them as one whole framework. You don't see them as separate.
It's just seamlessly. It just works seamlessly.
Yeah, that's the intention, and obviously that's got to be some work to do that. We've got things like profiles coming, so you can take a snapshot of a profile. You can then load that back into the scheduler. So you can take a kind of an LF profile, then you can create a medium wave profile or a HF profile or a VHF profile, and you can load those back into the scheduler and then start and stop plugins. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff happening in the next couple of releases. Then we've got the remote client support coming. So there's lots of stuff coming.
I think one final question I'll ask, Andy, is, and this might be a route for plugins rather than core functionality, but have you guys ever thought about including any kind of digital decoding, whether it be things like an FT8 decoder, Whisper decoder, digital audio decoders, things like that? Has that ever been discussed about bringing into as a core feature?
Yeah, it's I think adding sort of a lot of these decoders are either exist as sort of open source software at the moment, or some of them are even proprietary formats. So I think adding that into the core functionality of SDR Uno may give us some issues with not only rights to do that, but also resource. We've got a very finite resource here. So I think what we'll see is things like decoders will evolve in the best place really for them is for plugins. I mean, it'd be great if you can in the future just start up, go into the scheduler, say, okay, I want to do some FT8 decoding at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday, and okay, well, the FT8 decoder's in a plugin, but the rest of it's in Uno. But from a user point of view, the whole thing just works as one.
Absolutely.
That's really kind of where we're going. And the way that we've done the plugin system is we've done it deliberately with cross-platform in mind, because ultimately that's where we're going. So our direction of travel with SDR Uno is to go cross-platform. We go to Linux and Mac. And
how soon do you think we could see a version of SDR Uno on Mac?
I keep getting asked that question. I've only ever given out one date, one timescale for one thing that I did, and I got it completely wrong and got completely burned. So I don't give out dates or schedules anymore. It's too dangerous. All I can say is that, I mean, this is what I do. This is what I do 24/7. I only ever do SDR Uno developments or stuff that's related to SDR Uno, API work, that sort of thing. And it's always in mind to go. Ultimately to go cross-platform. So if you look at our roadmap, we've got 1.41, which is going to be out very soon with the scheduler, as I said. 1.42, we've got the remote server client work, which is coming on. Then we've got 1.43, which has got some changes and improvements to the scanner and the memory panel. And then we go cross-platform. And then it'll be as quick as I can possibly do it, but I can't. I can't give a date.
I think cross-platform is going to be a really big hit.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, when we've looked at what we do as a company, we don't really kind of look at our competitors. We do things like when we came in, we said, okay, well, if I was buying from this company, what would I want? Now, we didn't go out and intentionally get Windows software. Windows software was what was available to us to purchase. So that's where we've had to start. A number of, obviously a large part of our customer base is Windows based, but it's not all Windows based. So we've always had that in mind, that we've always had the view that we're going to go from Windows to cross-platform. But things like adding, documentation is very important to us. We always make sure that everything we do is fully documented. We try and put out as many videos as we can, and obviously channels like yours have got some great videos on all of the products, and the support. We want to make sure that people come to support, that if they've got problems, if they can't get running, we don't sort of just sell the device and leave people. If you really can't get going and you really need help, then there's lots of people in the community, and there's us to help you get up and running.
Yeah, I mean, you've got support through Facebook groups. You've got your documentation, obviously, on the website. Mike's obviously doing a load of videos as well on the SDRPlay tutorial. I can't remember his YouTube channel.
Radio Ham Guides.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And then obviously you've got the official SDRPlay YouTube channel, I believe. Is that what you look after, that one? Do you put videos
John
out?
maintains that mainly. I sort of chip in with the odd video when I can.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think videos speak 1,000 words, I mean, somebody can sit and read documentation and go crazy from reading it all. But when you've got somebody explaining it and going through it step by step with screenshots or your screen capture on a video, I think it really helps a lot.
It's interesting. There are people who just want videos. There are people who just want documentation, funny enough. But I think if we just try and provide the best of both worlds if we can.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, Andy. Well, thanks very much for joining us today on Tech Minds, and we'll catch up again soon. Take care.
Okay, thanks very much, Matt. Appreciate it.
So while I was at SDRPlay Labs, I had the chance to take a quick look at some of the equipment which is used in the design process. Now, some of you will already know what type of equipment this is and what it does. Now, one of the pieces of equipment in the lab is a network analyzer. Now, this is used to measure the performance of components, such as components which create filters. Now, if we take a filter as an example, a network analyzer would be able to provide information on how well those components are working within a circuit. Now, different makes of the same component could potentially have higher tolerances, which are more noticeable in cheaper made components. So it's important to test these components as part of the design process. Now, this example shows exactly why you pay more money for better quality products. Other pieces of equipment in the lab are signal generators. These are used to create a real signal which can be fed through components to check their tolerances. Another main use for a signal generator would be to feed a signal into the front end of a receiver so that you could test the receiver's sensitivity. Now, by combining the output from two signal generators and feeding that into the receiver, you're also able to test for signal intermodulation, and if the receiver has a blocking filter, you can test to see how well they work. In the real world, this could be two strong AM stations that are broadcasting near the same frequency. Now once the prototyping and testing has been performed, then it's then time to take those circuit designs and lay them out using specialist software. Now on the right we can see actual circuit diagrams, and on the left we have the PCB layout. Now the PCB layout will contain many layers of design, ranging from the tracks, the placement holes and component centers, so that the pick and place machines know exactly where to place a particular component. So let's take a look in the factory to see how this is all put together. So here we are at Walkbury Electronics, which is one of SDRPlay's factories which assemble the boards. Now the PCB boards will come into the factory like this, with more than one board on a single sheet. This makes it much more efficient by populating more than one board at a time. Now these bare PCB boards are then placed inside a loader. This loader then controls the flow of boards into the stencil printing machine. This stencil printing machine is responsible for placing a layer of solder paste over each of the gold pads. This part of the process is extremely critical, and the stencils, which are normally made from stainless steel or nickel, need to be 100% accurately made so that the solder paste is only applied where needed. Now large squeegees will move across the top of the stencil, which then applies the solder paste to the board. The solder paste also helps keep the components in place once the pick and place machines have placed the components. Now each component type is fed into the machine via its own spool. As this particular board is quite densely populated, 2 pick and place machines are being used. Now once the first machine has placed all of its components on the board, it will move on a conveyor into the next machine. If a particular component runs out, then a technician can easily come along and replace with a full spool of components. Now as the boards come out of the final pick and place machine, they can be manually inspected before they go into the oven. As the boards go through the oven, they are cooked at gradually increasing temperatures before they're finally cooled down. Now as the boards come out of the oven, they are then fed into the final machine. This machine takes mosaic style high resolution photos of each part of the boards. These images can then build up a 3D image of each of the soldered components. If any mistakes are logged, such as solder bridges or missing components or misplaced components, then this is logged in software and can be checked manually. Any boards which have been flagged as having a defect can then be checked using another piece of software which helps an engineer fix the issue. Each potential defect is logged and viewed in 3D. Occasionally, a false positive is flagged, but after manually checking, the engineer can just click the pass option on the software to log it. Now the software is so sensitive it can even detect if there's not enough solder on a particular component. Now this is quite impressive, as remember we're dealing with surface mount technology, which is extremely small. Now the last part of production for the newly made boards is to be placed into their casing with all the appropriate cables connected. Once they've been fully assembled and a last power on test is performed, they are then ready to be packaged and shipped to the resellers. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, please subscribe, and until the next video, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.